Okay, so in order to calculate the mean, normally you would just add your numbers up and get an average, but here we have what we call group data. So we have a little bit more work we have to do when it's grouped like this. So here is the formula for the mean of group data. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the sum of your frequencies times your midpoints. So you have to find your midpoint for each of these groups. So your midpoint for Z 0 to 2, the way you would do that is you would just basically get an average. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So it's just the middle. 2 to under 4, 2 plus 4 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. The midpoint, 4 plus 6 divided by 2 is 5. It's just the middle of each. And then 7. So our midpoint, see if I can move this and make it where we can do this on lines. So we said 1, 3, 5, 7. So now we're going to take the frequency times the midpoint, because that's what the formula down here says. 15 times 1, 19 times 3, 31 times 5, and then 74 times 7 is 2. I believe I added those right. So this little symbol right here tells me to sum these. So we're going to do 15 plus 57 plus 155 plus 518, and our sum is 745. So down here, the sum of F times M is 745 divided by N. Now, N is the amount of data points you have. So you have to add up your frequency. So 15 plus 19 plus 31 plus 74 is 139. Okay. Friday, Saturday, overnight. So N would be 139, and then you would divide, and you would get 5.359. I think we're rounding to 2 decimal places. So 5.36, let me see. No, 3 decimal places. So what that would mean would be, this would be 5.3597. So the 9 would round up to a 10. So it would be 5.360. So let's look at that. 5.360. Now, the next part is the standard deviation. Okay, so here for the standard deviation, we're going to take, it looks complicated, but it's not as bad as it seems. What we're going to do is we're going to take the midpoint for each group right here. We're going to subtract the mean. So let's go ahead and make a column for the mean, which is going to be the same because we already calculated that. You really don't have to put the 0. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can have room to write. Now, and we're going to take that, subtract the mean. So let's make a column for that. And then we're going to have a column for when we actually square it. And we're going to have a column where after we square it, we're going to times it by the frequency. And then once we do these things, we're going to sum it up, because this little E looking thing kind of looks like an E. That represents the sum. So we're going to add that last column up. Okay, so let's do the column, the midpoint, which is 1 minus 5.36. So we're doing 1 minus 5.36, the midpoint minus the mean. And we get negative. Oh, we get, I'm going to make this bigger because it's really hard to write. We get negative 4.36, and then you're going to square that. And it's very important that you round the way they're asking you to. So they want us to round to 3 decimal places as needed. So when you square this, you're going to get 19.009, but the 9 is going to round up to 10. So 19.01. Now we're going to times 19.01 times your frequency, which is 15, and you get 285.15. Now we're going to do the next one. We're going to do 3 minus 5.36. And you get negative 2.36, and then you're going to square that and round to 3 decimal places, and it's going to round to 5.57, and then you're going to times it by 57, and you're going to get 317.467. Then the next one, you're going to do 5 minus 5.36. And you're going to get negative 0.36. You're going to square that, and you're going to get 0.130. And then you're going to times that by your frequency, which is 31. And you end up getting 4.018. Then you're going to do 7 minus 5.36, and you get 1.64, and then you're going to square that and get 2.690, and then you're going to times that by your frequency, which is 74, and you get 199.030. Now, it says, our formula says, once we take the midpoint, subtract the mean, square it, and times it by the frequency, we have to sum those numbers. So 199.03 plus 4.0 plus 317.467 plus 285.15. And you're going to get 805.665. So down here, we're going to do the square root of 805.665 divided by n, which is 139 minus 1. So basically, 805.665 divided by 138. And don't round here. Take the square root of that answer. So whatever you get when you divide, don't round that. It's like a really long number, 5.838152174. So when you take the square root of it, you would get 2.416. Now, if I didn't make any mistakes, which it's very easy to make a mistake here, that should be the right answer. If you miss it, it's usually because of rounding. Okay, so let's go back and retrace our steps here. One thing I like to do is view the example, and I go through and just make sure okay, so they did round when they took the square root. So that is important here. So you're going to divide and get 5.838. So take the square root of 5.838. So we get 2.416. Let's look at that. And hopefully that's what we got the first time. So I'm going to pause it and go through and check my work. Okay, so I went back and I believe I corrected 2 numbers that were not right. I believe it was these 2 here. I probably multiplied by the wrong thing. When I did 5.57, I should have multiplied by the frequency of 19. I'm not sure if I did that or not. And when I did 0.130, I should have multiplied it by 31. So that did make my numbers off. So when I add these up, I'm going to get 594.07. So down here I do 594.07 divided by 138, and I got 4.305. And once I take the square root of that, I get 2.075. And that is how you do your standard deviation. Yes, it is a lot of work, but if you set up your columns like I did each time and really make sure you're multiplying by the frequency, because there's so many numbers up here, you have to be careful and make sure you're multiplying by the frequency and not accidentally right here or the midpoint. But let me know if you have any questions.